Hey guys, what's up? Alec, Torelli here. Today we're going to talk about where poker fits in one's life and how to keep this balance. And I get this question so often. This actually came from a client of mine I was working with this past week, and we really got into this. And he was, trying to make his poker goals work, right? So he wants to make a certain amount on the side. Playing poker is a very common thing I hear with people that I work with or people that take our programs. They really want to make a couple grand a month, but they don't want poker to be their number one. So they have other things in their life they're doing. So poker's great because you can make money doing it. So a lot of people that come to me are like, look, I'm gonna play, depending on the person and then their situation, twice a week for 6 to 8 hours a day. So, maybe 3 times a week, a couple hours online, whatever, 15, 20 hours a week. And I'm playing 2-5 or 5-10. And so I can make a couple grand a month doing what I love doing. But so it's not about the money, but it is about the money. It's money's way of keeping score. So it's like they want to do well. But at the same time, poker has the tendency to just be all encompassing. And you guys probably can relate to this. There are times in my life when I play poker and it's like other things that are important to me could easily fall off the wayside. And this happened in the past. Very good about this now. But it's easy to kind of have that difficulty finding the balance between poker and other things. And this is especially true if poker is a number 2, because now you have a number 1 that's even more important that can't be neglected. I mean, it's one thing if you're a professional poker player or aspiring professional, you just went all in on poker, and if other things in your life are being neglected because you're perfecting your craft or you're trying to reach the highest levels in the world in poker, okay, you have to make compromises to reach the highest levels or to achieve your goals, and this is your main focus in your life. But most people aren't in that spot. For most people, poker's a number 2. So not only it's much worse for a number 2 to take over your life than a number 1, because the number 1 is the main thing you're focused on, right? When a number 2 takes over your life, it's quite a bit of a problem. So, but it's also harder to balance a number 2 in the sense that if poker's a number 1, you're not going to necessarily struggle to have enough time for poker because it's your number 1. So you can just avoid having a number 2. If you don't have a side hustle and poker's your number 1, you spend 40 hours a week playing poker, it's unlikely that it's going to take over your life necessarily because you have so much time to dedicate to the game that you're already finding that balance. Not to say it's not hard to play poker as a professional. It's very hard. I think it's actually harder. There's other balance issues that people struggle with. But my point being that when poker's a number 2 and you only have 15 hours a week to play, you make your own schedule and you have your own time. And then poker's capturing some of that. It has a lot higher of an opportunity cost because your number 1 has so much more importance, right? If someone's playing 2-5 and they're successful businessman, you're playing 2-5, playing 5-10, what are you going to make per hour? You're going to make $50 an hour or something like that. If you're doing something in your job, you run your own business, the $50 an hour might be a successful businessman that's good at poker playing 5-10, right? So that would be a very good goal. But if you're working outside in someone's job, they might be making a lot more than that if they run a business or something, right? Or they're a lawyer or the doctor or whatever, right? So there's always an opportunity cost for your time. So it has to remain a hobby. So I was going over this with someone, and a couple of reflections occurred to me during my coaching session that I'd like to share with you. So the first one is to think about this simple framework of poker falling in 2 categories. It's a fine line between these 2 categories. And so this is the challenge that people face with poker, because poker is you experience it your body, your mind, experiences it like it would gambling, right? You could win and lose at the drop of a bucket. You can sit down at the table, win $1,000 or $5,000, depending how big you're playing. You could win a lot of money relative to the game size or relative to what you're used to probably in a very short amount of time. Whereas even if you run a successful company, it takes the pace of business is slower than the pace of poker. That's just kind of obvious. And so it's very exciting of a game. It's very captivating, and it's easy to be lured in by the opportunity and the excitement and the feedback loop of dopamine and serotonin, all this stuff going on in your brain, of playing poker. So there's that component to it that makes this a slippery slope. And there's also the component of the degeneracy side of poker where people are letting it take over their life and they're making bad decisions with their finances and they're gambling away their money, which is a very serious thing. And so there's that component of poker as well. There's a dark side of poker, and there's some people that, like alcohol, there's a lot of people that have, a glass of red wine socially, but there's people that are alcoholics. So there's the dark side of poker too. So I'm aware of that, I'm empathetic to that, and that's a serious component. But most people watching this are probably not going to get to that dark side, complete degeneracy where they're gambling away their life savings. But there's a slippery slope somewhere in between on a reasonable end of the spectrum where poker's just a hobby and it's in the right place in your life versus it's a habit. So these are the signs that poker has shifted from a hobby to a habit. So if poker's taking over your life, you're neglecting other things, you're out of shape, you're losing sleep, you're eating bad, compromising relationships, your lifestyle, fucker, you got a habit. You know, you don't have a hobby anymore. You have a fucking habit, right? So especially if poker's a number 2. If poker's a number 1 and you pull an all-nighter because the game is fucking amazing and you don't work out the next day, like you could kind of argue you were doing your job. Like you're neglecting some aspect of your life in the short term for the, short-term amazing hourly opportunity of playing in an incredible game where your hourly rate might double between, 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. because the game is incredible and the stakes got doubled. And like that's the trade-off that professional poker players make. And that's very common. I've done that many, many times throughout my career. And pretty much everyone I'm sure could relate to that to some extent, where like the game you're playing is so good that you pass up on other things to want to play in that game. Or at least you probably wanted to. You wanted to like, okay, I have this other commitment, but I'm justifying playing in the game. So there's a fine line there between doing that once in a short-term perspective or making that a compulsive habit and then other things in your life are completely getting neglected. So I think it's important to have this conversation. I think it's important to accept and to acknowledge that poker has this dark side. And it's up to us as individuals to be responsible about where we're fitting poker on this spectrum and where we're fitting poker in our life. So the advice I gave to my client was like, look, you have your number 1 business. Guy does very well in his business and he wants to make money playing poker as a way of keeping score, but he's not trying to like supplement his lifestyle by playing poker. Other people are trying to supplement their lifestyle by playing poker, and that's fine too. But either way, it's a supplement. It's a number 2. It's not a number 1. So the number 1 cannot be neglected at all costs because it would be silly to, push yourself all into poker and try and make a couple grand here, whatever on the side when you're already having this business that's super successful. You're already top of your field. Like that would be like a pretty silly economic trade, right? So it's not like he's retired or anything either, where he's just like, I've worked my whole life, I sold my company, I'm dedicating the rest of my time to poker, like in my retirement. Other clients do that, that's fine. He's in this spot where like that's clearly not an option. So the number 1 can't be neglected. So the balance here that I find, and there's kind of 2 different balances. There's balances for professionals and there's balances for people that are having poker as a number 2. I'm kind of going with the number 2 because I'm assuming most people are in that spot, and also because this is the client I worked with. But the key is that like if time is being taken away from the number 1, not consciously, then you have a habit. You don't have a hobby. And so what I challenged him to do was like, look, sit down, be rational, think about your goals, like in your personal life and your career, and then think about your poker goals and like, where does poker fit? Like, what is the optimal amount of time you want to play poker? Because if you leave it up to chance, poker has this negative externality to like take over other aspects of your life. And we have this tendency to like compromise things for poker. So like, if you have loose plans on a Saturday night and you go sit down at the table on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, you might blow off those plans because you're at the table, right? And so poker kind of can like creep into other things that objectively are really important to us. But then because we're in this heat of the moment emotional state, making decisions emotionally, not rationally, we can make poor decisions that don't align with our long-term goals. So I was like, look, sit down when you're completely rational. Like think about how many hours in an ideal week, your perfect week, your dream life, how many hours would you play? For him, it turns out to be like 2 sessions, 6 to 8 hours. So maybe that's like Saturday from 11 to 5, right? And this coincides with when the games are good. Like typically maybe on a Saturday, the games are better, or maybe sometimes he plays on a Sunday afternoon or whatever. But then afterwards, he has like concrete plans after that where things are like important to him to do after. So Saturday night at 7, he has a date or he has, some sort of plan, a club, a meetup, like an entrepreneur group, whatever, something he's going to do. So that there's a hard commitment that like he goes home, changes showers, and goes to play. And then notice these signs, right? Like any time that other things are neglected, and there's a list of other things. There's your health, there's your relationships, there's your sleep, your eating habits, your lifestyle. Like when those things start to be compromised, right? You can make one compromise once in a short term, you can kind of pull the rope a little bit, right? But there comes a point where it's like a very slippery slope where your hobby changes into a habit. So these are the things to be aware of. And the exercise I would challenge people to do is like really get clear on where poker fits first, objectively, when you're calm and you're not emotional. And then at the table, you have this little window where poker remains a hobby, and you can be flexible a little bit so that like if you're in a great game, fine, you could stay a little bit longer, maybe like certain times. But it's fit within the scope of what someone wants for their life, and it stays a hobby, doesn't become a habit. I hope this video helped. Leave your thoughts in the comment below. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like my help on your poker journey, there's opportunity to work with me below as well. Otherwise, visit consciouspoker.com with a lot of great content. So subscribe to the channel, more awesome content's coming, and I'm Alec Torelli. See you in the next one.